Hi everyone, thanks for joining. The session is being recorded and will be shared with attendees afterwards. If you have questions, please submit them via the Q&A during the presentation. We'll review the questions at the end. If you are watching this via the recording afterwards and you have questions, please email them to info@buzzback.com. I'd like to introduce Martin Oxley. Martin established Buzzback in Europe in 2007 to exploit the transformational power of the internet, having worked previously at Ipsos and TNS. He's interested in technology and how it applies to research, but is much more interested in people. He has been a regular speaker at ESMAR, MRS, and other industry conferences, and has won the best case study at ESMAR Congress. In 2009, he was awarded the MRS Fellowship for his outstanding contribution to the UK research industry. Martin, please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Matthew. Thank you for reading out that. Every time I hear it, it makes me feel that much older. Thank you everyone for joining our webinar today, and which will last around 30 minutes or so. And we've called it, oh no, Agile Again, because I'm sure you've heard a lot about agility, and you yourself are already somewhere on the journey from being a kind of newbie or just for making your first steps, or you're an expert and you're very experienced in this area. And when I was putting the slides together for this deck, I was reminded of the movie Fight Club. I don't know if anyone on the webinar has seen that, but if you remember, it's a movie with Brad Pitt. So stop swooning at the back when I mention the word Brad Pitt. And there's a great quote when Brad in that movie says, "The first rule about Fight Club is you don't talk about Fight Club. And the second rule about Fight Club is you don't talk about Fight Club." And I think this reminds me a bit about agile research in a way. People that are doing it now aren't really talking about it as such. They're just doing it. It is that overused expression, the kind of new normal. I don't think we'll go back to non-agile ways of doing research. And in the next, as I said, 30 minutes or so, hopefully you'll benefit from some of our experiences at Buzzback of conducting agile research, but also some of our client case studies that we'll share nearer the end. But if you want a hand with any part of that journey, whether you're expert or whether you're a newbie, please do let us know. Reach out to us, either me, Martin at buzzback.com, or any of the colleagues that you know. And we'd only be too pleased to talk you through the journey of agility, because although we'll be talking about technology a little later, I think the real thing about agility is in the people rather than the tools themselves. So speaking of movies, I just mentioned Fight Club. I now wanted to show you a short video. You may have seen it before, but it does bear seeing again. And it's about listening to signals around you and adjusting your course of action as you proceed. No matter how large or how powerful your organization is, you need to be listening to these signals in an agile way so you can take action. So think of this film that I'll show you in a moment as a metaphor. And as many great metaphors and great stories, they start somewhere in the Irish Sea.
Again, this is the USS Montana requesting that you immediately divert your course 15 degrees to the north to avoid a collision. Over.
Please divert your course 15 degrees to the south to avoid collision.
This is Captain Hancock. You will divert your course. Over.
Negative, Captain. I'm not moving anything. Change your course. Over.
So, this is the USS Montana, the second largest vessel in the North Atlantic Fleet. You will change course 15 degrees north, or I will be forced to take measures to ensure the safety of this ship. Over.
This is the lighthouse, mate. It's your call. Hello?
So I don't know if you empathize with the lightship or the USS Montana, but it brought a smile to my face when I saw it many years ago. And I hope it also actually partially explains the image that you can see here, where we've got a small boat. We had a small boat and a big boat at the beginning. It's, again, a metaphor about how huge, large things can actually be helped on their way by small tugs, but we've got a little bit more about that later as well. So what I've got here on this slide is what we'll cover today for the rest of the session. We'll set the scene with some comments on culture and agility in general, to set insight in a broader business context, because as you know, insight doesn't exist on its own. It has to be embedded within an organization. We'll then talk about some of the practical ways that we've encountered obstacles ourselves, how things that get in the way, and how we've helped clients kind of navigate around them. And then we'll share 3 mini case studies, as you can see here, one from Mondelēz, one from Dole, and Appalache, about how we've helped them on their agile journey. And we highlight within those some pieces around technology that we've developed. And then finally, as Matthew said, there should be some time at the end if you want to ask questions. We can either do it live, or if you're watching it in the recording, send an email to info@buzzbag or myself, Martin at Buzzbag, and we'll get back to you on that. So now I think it's worth stepping back a little and asking the question, how does Agile fit in a broader innovation context within a business? And I'm sure it doesn't. You don't need me to tell you that the world of research is usually focused on the top right here about desirability. You know, do consumers want what we want to make? Do they even like what we want to make? How can we increase the desirability? But of course, the other 2 big aspects are feasibility. Can we make or create the product or the service? And also, is it actually viable? And to make things more complex, these 3 components are constantly changing, being impacted by your competition, of course, shifts in society, global pandemics, who'd have thought we'd have been saying that 2 years ago, and just general business uncertainty. And of course, in a way, this is where research comes in. We're trying to help you with this idea, this kind of light bulb. Incidentally, does anyone have a better idea for a visual to represent an idea? But let's go with light bulb. So here we're trying to help you with the uncertainty, the fuzzy front end of knowledge on the left-hand side, represented by a squiggle, and trying to help you dampen the curve and provide clarity over time, a bit like the waves on the Montana in the video. And we can do this in a number of different ways. And there are a number of different testing tools and evaluation tools to help you learn and improve your idea as you go along. And then you can ask yourself questions: should we continue? Should we persevere? Should we improve? Or indeed, should we kill it? And Agile research helps us with this process because we can always be on, in essence. We're constantly, excuse the overuse of the tugboat, but we're always pulling on that huge ship just to get it in line. And the benefits of doing it like this, the benefits of this particular kind of approach, is it reduces risk and it reduces uncertainty. We're never going to be in a perfectly clear world, especially now. But what we're doing is, if you like, lifting some of the fog, lifting some of the uncertainty. And this is before your business, our clients, commit too much management commitment, too much skin in the game, too much money behind an idea that may just not be not appropriate. And one of the other advantages I'm sure you're aware of is that Agile research is typically more cost effective. And because it's cheaper, it means clients no longer only have to invest research in the big bets, where something shown here is important and where there's little or no information to support a big decision. These big bets require information. And what Agile has done is, with its more cost-effective way of doing work, it allows us to move down the uncertainty curve and plug some of these insight gaps that typically we wouldn't have covered before. It's like if you've come across the idea of bootstrapping in entrepreneurial environments. It's like doing more with the little that you have. And this is the case with Agile research. We have big corporates, you'll see some of those later, who are using Agile research and doing research they historically just wouldn't have done. And we are also opening it up to businesses who historically haven't had the budget, but now need some consumer feedback. And of course, many corporate businesses themselves are learning from the entrepreneurial environments before they emulate those models, those agile models of working, and indeed often then going on and buying some of those businesses themselves. But what are the obstacles to achieving this sort of idea of agility? What are some of the things that get in the way? Well, there are two really big buckets. One is broader organizational obstacles, and then the second are obstacles to agile research. And I'll come to those in a moment. But on this slide, I'm covering obstacles to organizational agility. So if you like, this component covers the three components of the Venn diagram I showed earlier, and I'll focus on consumer research in a moment. So some of the obstacles here that we've seen and are aware of ourselves, and you can see the reference to a really great article on the bottom of the slide here. So you may be a risk-averse culture, not giving people confidence to act. Maybe this resolves around sort of budget ownership or even zero-based budgeting. It may just be a culture that's been established where people feel uncomfortable or unable to take a risk. It may be about a lack of clarity with roles and vision and expectation, who does what. I liken this really to a football team, and I mean soccer if you're in the US. So football team where people don't necessarily know which position they're playing in, and if everybody plays in the net, nobody scores any goals. If everyone plays in the plays a striker, then everybody scores a goal. So it's this idea of role, collaboration and teamwork. If you're in a top-down hierarchical organization like Captain Hancock there in the video of the US Navy that I showed earlier, you've got a temptation just to try and power through things without listening to others. Good luck with that if you hit a lighthouse. And then finally, you've got this whole idea of consumer centricity not being ingrained in an organization. I think things are changing here, but it's easy to play lip service to it, but not actually do it. So addressing all of these, as you can imagine, is way outside the scope of this particular presentation. But there are some significant obstacles built into this to consumer-driven agility. But what I now want to do is focus on things that I hope are more directly relevant to this audience. And this is obstacles to research agility, or research and insight, as I guess I should show it. And all of you on this call, wherever you are on this journey, will have encountered some of these, all of these, and probably others. But I just want to take you through a few. Where you are, for example, on the Agile journey, we are not believers, as you'll see in a moment, in one size fits all. There isn't one solution to every problem. There are different needs on that particular journey. For example, a quick test of an idea is not the same as some deep ethnographic in-home study where you're looking for some key insights. The second bit, brief. Are you looking for research to help you in that direction, just nudge you the right way? Or is it that you're looking for a real deep consumer human truth that may be also in a different market? So the need here for a quick check on direction is very different to unearthing an insight. Culture, we've touched upon that. Maybe a culture of not learning from mistakes or blaming others. There is a lovely expression you may have come across, which is it takes a village to make a child. And I think that's true within business as well. You need a team to make a great product. It's not just one person. Are your stakeholders aligned with both the process and the outcome? At Buzzbite, we've got some great suggestions here for how to ensure that stakeholders are sharing on that journey with the research and comparing consumer responses at the same time. I won't mention purchasing, but making sure POs and systems are in place. We've done projects which we could field quicker than we can get the purchase order. So again, if the culture is about agility, let's get that purchase order in time. There's, of course, also then confidence in others, especially if you've got a DIY platform that you release to other people in marketing or indeed others. Do you trust that they'll do the right thing and make the right decision? And then this idea of DIY, do it yourself, do it together, do it for you. Are you choosing the right service, the right tool for the particular job, which goes back to the brief and goes back to the point on the journey, selecting the right tool for the job. And then the last two things really, don't let perfection get in the way of good enough. Don't sweat the small stuff. I saw that in a place in Brighton in England, someone had spray painted on a door, don't sweat the small stuff. And I thought, yeah, don't sweat the small stuff. Sweat the big stuff later. And then finally, a particular bugbear of researchers everywhere is the stimulus material, the format of it, the content, the level of finish, the minimal viable idea, minimal viable product, all of those things. So there are many different obstacles to agility, and they're very practical. But before I summarize some ways that we found to get around them, I'd like to introduce you to some other buzzbackers on a short video for 2 minutes here to hear what they have to say about agility and how they might guide you. Because as I said earlier, it's not just about technology, it's about the people to help you on that journey. So let me introduce 3 of my colleagues.
So Agile research, I think the assumption is usually that Agile means fast, but I think it more means being efficient or iterative or resourceful. So it's when you take out unnecessary steps or things that don't really help with the process or getting to answers more directly. So as an example, as a qualitative researcher, instead of me doing 10 focus groups on the same set of stimuli, after the first few sessions, when we learn a little bit, we iterate based on what we learned so far, and then just get feedback on those optimized versions. So we're eliminating those middle steps and we're getting to the answers a little bit more directly. It's smarter, it's more efficient, and it takes us to those answers without the clutter of maybe additional irrelevant insights.
And when I think about Agile research, I think about working smarter, not necessarily harder or faster. Although faster, I think, is the implication with Agile research. What we need to do to make research actually run faster is to be smarter. So that's using new techniques, that's using innovation and technology, and that's also collaborating with our clients in new ways. So using blended approaches so that we can iterate on our findings and dig deeper throughout qualitative research and really be able to shorten that time frame of qualitative research and pivot when the learnings change. And as far as technology goes, there's so many new at our disposal to aid in both our recruitment, in our field work, and then also in our analysis. And then also bring new life to our analysis through video clips and a lot more engaging visuals that enable our client to get a more holistic, well research.
For me, it's all about using experience and intuition to work effectively and quickly. And I think that cheetahs best exemplify this. They're the fastest land mammal, but they don't hunt at their top speed. They maneuver, they weave, they stop and start and adapt to the situation in order to catch their prey. And agility at work, and particularly in insights, is all about this, the ability to pivot and change direction to ensure that the overriding business objective is met.
Great. Sorry, it's me again. I'm back. So thank you to Monica, Darren and Jenny for some of their comments there. But one of the things here on this slide here, I just wanted to lay out some of the sort of considerations to address some of the obstacles that the guys talked about and I talked about earlier. Things about, stakeholders not being fully engaged, maybe the organization is not fully consumer centric and so on. Some simple things here like, having kickoff meetings, managing clients' expectations internally. So we are setting off on that journey together. They say, you can, if you want to go fast, go on your own. If you want to go far, go with others. And so that's around engaging. It's about communication, pushing, rather than asking people to go to a website for things. We push it. Scope creep, making sure we've got a clear brief and we can keep referring to it. And one of the other agile mindsets, as I think Jenny commented on, was actually we can always go back. We can always pivot. Let's not try and do everything within one instrument. Fixed and growth mindsets. Monica talked about changing focus during field if something maybe isn't working, putting the emphasis on a concept that maybe is. Let's be putting our attention where it counts. Perhaps my favorite is Occam's razor, the idea of, the world's incredibly complicated. Sometimes in his view, he's a very old guy now and very dead, 17th century. But actually, an idea that's the simplest is probably the best, and behavioral economics would support that as well. So the principles of parsimony and storytelling and having visual debriefs to make ideas stick. And then the final thing really is an evolution of the stage gate, which I think has now I think it needs a little bit of attention. If you remember, it looked a lot like this. And we think this needs to be challenged now, because what we hear a lot of is, I don't have time. And I think we hear this a lot at a researcher level, at a client level, but also I think at an organizational level, going back to the three components of the Venn diagram earlier. Organizations don't have time, so our researchers, our clients don't either. But also, how do you address this need for speed, if you like, but also deploy, Jenny's cheetah, not running so fast for every particular study. And of course, not all projects are about flat out speed. And what we've done at BuzzBack, as you can see on the slide here, is we've launched a piece of technology called Express, you can see bottom right, where our clients' problems really are about speed and testing and doing it, really as rapidly as possible. And this is really what it looks like. It's designed purely for speed of launch, speed of field, but also the speed of interpretation, because we've spent a lot of time emphasizing the debrief component. And it's also been designed for the DIY, the do-it-yourself, the do-it-together. We're using the tool on behalf of our clients increasingly now, but also we do it for our clients, so it might be part of a program. So actually, we built this tool expecting it to be really DIY. And in fact, it's less DIY than it is some of the other considerations I've just mentioned. And of course, we followed the Google model of agility, which you can see here, which is about test and relearn and refine, test, relearn and refine. And as I said, we don't think this particular piece of technology is appropriate for every part of your innovation journey. What you can see on the slide here is a couple of areas where we think it works extremely well, which is where you're on your journey and you just want to test and decide whether to progress and how to progress. And how it kind of works in summary, and of course there's a website, and if you're interested in more detail, we can share that. But essentially what we've set up is a series of sort of standard questions for standard kinds of challenges. We've set it up to be intuitive, so it's mobile first for our consumers, and most of the takes that we're seeing now are being taken on mobile. They can still do it on laptop, of course. It's fast. Clearly, but it's also this focusing on the why, and this is why the emphasis on reporting and understanding is so key. Knowing where you're going is just as important as what you can do about it. And as I've said, designed for DIY and also BuzzBack enabled. And the way it looks, if you were to use it, or we're using it on your behalf, is on the screen now. I'm not doing this live myself, incidentally. I can't move the mouse this quickly. But you can see we've set it up to be simple in use, to be simple in terms of stimulus material. Here, setting up a packaging study, for example, in store, we can pre-populate that for you, so you don't have to rebuild this all of the time. And you can have these standard questions. And here now what you're seeing is some of the standard reporting within the tool itself. So you can actually have it online, you can share it with others, and you can share that data and the diagnostics behind it. So you can do that in hours, and perhaps most importantly, be checking as well on the progress of your study if you wish, or we can do it for you. But I think the outcome is the critical component here, which is, you can launch a study literally in 90 seconds. You can get it out there, but then the reports that you can get back to push to those stakeholders potentially. And the final component here that you can see is, clients often ask us to write some of the summary reports for them because they simply don't have the time. So that's Express. And the reason I wanted to talk about Express is it's one piece of technology, but it's also embedded in the 3 mini case studies that I'd like to share with you now. And if you haven't noticed, I've called it mini case studies because on the left are some mini cases. Yeah, it's as bad as it gets. So the first one for Mondelēz, and this I think is an interesting example where the client here probably wouldn't have spent budget on doing the research. So this is agile within a large corporate environment, which is clearly, it's now a $1 billion brand. And this work was done for the Snap Futures Group, and we have permission from Barbara Shandel there to share that. And so it was a naming study. We evaluated 13 different names in just 2 days in different markets. And what I wanted to really just illustrate here is not just the speed, of course, but one of the projective techniques you can see there on the screen, which is we call thought bubble, which is how this person may describe it to another. And so this just gives us diagnostics beyond just the scores. It's beyond just the metrics. And as I said, the alternative to doing this research was probably no research at all. They would have made a decision without some of those guidance. And what Barbara said, she sent us this wonderful quote where she said, Express helped us get more agile and faster learning on new ideas. This is essential as we are on a fast track to developing and introducing snacking products, driving the future of Mondelēz innovation. We at Snack Futures explore new ways and methods to keep pace with our innovation. So that's the Mondelēz case study, mini case study. The second one is Dole. You may be familiar with the Dole Sunshine campaign and promise, which makes me smile because we all need a little sunshine, especially after the pandemic. And their mission-driven beginnings of over 170 years ago, and they say, Dole has believed that good, healthy food should be more like sunshine available for us all. And who could disagree with that? And Dole used our Express platform for test and learning at several stages of their journey from concept to claims, to naming, to pack, to help them evolve their ideas and get them into market quickly. And the client has said to us here, send us a nice quote, which is, time is of the essence for us. And we've worked on iterative development with Packcept, collaborating with their design agency on design refinements while working with Buzzback, then going into naming for new product introduction and also claims optimization. And so you can see here broadly what they did, not only looking at the metrics, but also real-time diagnostics coming on, this kind of idea of always on. And not having the more old-fashioned stage gate approaches. And the last but not least is Appalache. And I must admit, seeing, because I skipped lunch today, and now looking at those pancakes, making me thinking I need to eat soon, and maybe it should be pancakes. But you may not have heard of Appalache Nature before, but they're a leading provider of maple syrup products and founded in Canada. And they were looking to expand in the US, clearly their large southern neighbor. So they wanted to look at behavior and then test some different ideas. And so what they did is they did a similar kind of process to what I've described. But for them, they wouldn't have had the budgets for standard kind of FMCG, CPG work. So they needed some foundational and concept feedback done really cost effectively. So the client quote here for us is, we wanted to understand more about maple syrup so we could position Maple Joe better in the US. So our journey included a 2-step process to explore perceptions, usage and unmet needs in a qualitative and quantitative U&A or A&U, followed by some testing. And Express helped them accelerate their innovation. So those were the sort of 3 case studies. There are many more on our website that we could share with you, but we just really wanted to take you high level through some very tactical work that these clients had been able to do using some of our tools. So now really just to sum up, I just wanted to share with you really in one slide our point of view on agility. We had some questions actually before we did the webinar about, what is agility? Is it technology? Is it mindset? Well, I think it's both. And so for us, one of our recommendations really is that wherever we can, let's engage consumers as early as possible in the journey. And engaging consumers early in the journey means that we can afford to take a few risks. We can also get a better understanding of who they are, how they live, what they need. Let's maybe understand them as we're developing ideas for them rather than trying to sell them an idea that we've already created. Co-create an iterating context, doing it not in isolation, helping them think of new ideas and applications of ideas. Learning from failure rather than failing, so moving rapidly and selecting rigorously. And if an idea needs killing, let's kill it early before we get too much management commitment behind it. And then finally, let's make sure we've brought everyone on this journey together and align internally. And if we've got cross-functional support and understanding, that team can go anywhere with their successors. So that's really what I wanted to say, but also end on a nautical theme again. As you remember, we started with a nautical theme. And I wanted to just show you this picture. And you may be very familiar with this, but it's a great end to the story because apparently this huge ship that blocked the Suez Canal for days, literally days. And I think I read somewhere that it was something like 20% of world trade was affected because of this one ship being stuck. Apparently, if they'd had a little tugboat, do you remember that little tugboat right at the beginning? A little tugboat could have pulled it through before it got stuck in the sand. And I think the final irony of that particular story is the boat, you can see part of it, but it was called Ever Given. You can't make this up, can you? So thank you very much for your attention. And so hopefully there may be some questions. Matthew, so if I can hand back to you.
Yes, no, thank you very much, Martin. And we do have a couple of questions. So someone's asked, when is fast better than more traditional approaches?
Well, I hope that I've sort of explained here as we've gone through. I think really it depends on where you are on that journey. Is it a big bet? Is it an incremental, maybe just a facelift on a product, or is it maybe just a little bit of a packaging redevelopment, or is it the launch of a new idea that you may have to build factories for? So I suppose it depends on the level of risk. But one of the great things about just doing things fast is that you can learn more about an idea before you maybe go into another form of pressure testing. So hard to address that question, but I think the key component would be the risk associated with success and failure before you address that. What I'd like to be able to say is we had some foundational understandings before we were testing anything.
Thank you. And also, interesting question, any advice for startups with limited budgets?
Yes, well, first of all, I give you, wish you all the luck that you need there, because I think startups are so exciting and so wonderful, especially when you see the growth. I think, some of my advice there is that, and I read this morning actually a Malcolm Gladwell article, fantastic article about the Rand Corporation, which I think is relevant here. And he said, this is just such a great quote. He said, even the smartest people cannot make a list of things that have not occurred to them. And I think that I just love that idea, and the Rand Corporation used it for war games. And why I think that's relevant for small entrepreneurs is that sometimes you don't know what you don't know. And the thing about doing research is that you can actually find out things that you would have never known. So my recommendation there would be to find some budget somewhere to do some form of research so that you can actually List those things that have never occurred to you, and not be so committed to your idea that actually you make a mistake further down the line. But always happy to talk to whoever that is, because it's not an easy thing, especially when you're bootstrapping.
Thank you, Martin. Another one. So someone's asked about how to implement Agile across functions and the challenges of Agile for the non-dedicated project team.
Yes. Well, I guess it's the the three circles in the Venn diagram I talked earlier about. And I think this is particularly challenging if you're perhaps the only researcher in an organization, or an organization without researchers at all, being the consumer voice. I think one of the small things we do there that I would, there's an article on our website. If you can't find it, I'll email me and I'll point you to it, which is we call hiding in plain sight. And some of the clients on this call have done this with us, where we may actually ask those other stakeholders to actually evaluate the ideas as we also ask consumers to evaluate the ideas. And when you compare the two together, honestly, magic happens. And so that might be a little bit of a recommendation there, just to get them to see what they think of their ideas compared to consumers. And then they're not right, they're not wrong, there's no right or wrong about it, but it's a really nice insight just to see through the lens of someone else.
Thank you very much, Martin, and for the presentation as well. Thank you, everyone. That is all the questions we have time for. If we haven't answered your question, we will get back to you shortly. Just before we go, though, we hope to see you at Quirks, whether that's Chicago, London, and/or New York. I'd love to be going to all three, but just London for me. But we're excited to get back to in-person events. So we hope to see you there. And at each show, we're actually giving away, via our competition, the chance to win an express study. So come to our booth at any one of the shows for a chance to enter and win a study and try it out for yourself. Thank you very much, Martin. Thanks very much to our audience, and thanks very much for joining, and we'll see you at the next one.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks all. Thanks. Bye.